Welcome back, guys and girls. Today we have another redneck repair going on. Sorry, the neighbor's mowing. Hope you don't hear too much of that, too little of what I'm saying, but we'll give this a try. This little episode is repairing or refreshing a typical lawnmower starter solenoid. You guys have seen these, probably if you've ever worked on a lawnmower. But anyway, this one here clicks, but it doesn't always engage the starter or energize the starter. So, what I've done is taken it apart. Of course, they'll tell you there are no user serviceable parts in these. And generally that's true unless you know what you're doing. Usually when you see these, they look like this. They're all put together, and you've got a couple of contacts sticking out, or a couple of spade terminals sticking out, and then you've got these two bolts, and that's where your hot cable coming from your battery and going to your starter mount. Well, since this one still clicks, I know it's all still functioning. It's just not actually switching the electricity on. And if you look down in there, you can see why. The one post is all black and carboned up, and that is from the arc of switching and turning off the electricity. So what I've done, these are held together with little rivets that are bradded over, and I have just taken and with a grinder, I actually use my pedestal grinder, but you could use just about anything. I've just barely ground those off. And then you take a hammer and a little punch or a screwdriver or something and you knock them out and pull them out. When you do, first thing you'll see is that spring sitting on top of this solenoid arrangement. Okay, you take the spring out. The solenoid arrangement just lifts out, but you have to be very careful because underneath this tape, get it off of there, underneath this tape are these two fine copper wires that are soldered to your spade terminals. And if you break those, it will not function anymore. You either have to solder them back on, or if you break them from the coil, you're pretty much done. And what you have to do, those two spade terminals sit in those two slots. So you have to carefully work the two terminals slowly up out of the plastic, and then as you get them to the very top, you pull them loose, and then you can lift the solenoid out. And the solenoid itself is just a coil of wire and a steel plunger. The steel plunger has a hole in it, so does the cover, and that is where this little arrangement right here resides. And normally this little keeper, this little retainer, is pushed on there holding that spring tight against this. This is the bar that actually makes connection between your two posts that your battery cable and your starter cable hooks to. As you can see, that one is burnt too. And if you'll notice, one end looks to be like silver, a silver look to it. Well, and you look on the back and it's the same way. The reason is that is silver. These are plated with silver. Now, if this was an industrial relay, like on, say, a pallet jack or a forklift or everything, this whole thing would be coated in silver and it would be thick. And the reason they put silver on them is the silver will make the connection, but it doesn't weld nearly as often or easily as copper does. So they put a thin layer of silver on there, and that allows this to make and break the connection without welding solid. So as you can see, that one is burnt also. But this is a pretty easy repair. What we're going to do is simply drop that off, and don't lose your parts, and we're going to turn it over. We're going to put it right back on. So now that part is done. Bear with me for a second. That part is done, other than reassembling the spring and the retainer on it. And the way you get these little retainers off, sorry, my hands don't work the way they used to. The way you get this retainer off, it's usually pushed down on there, is you take a pair of pliers. I used these little vice grips over here. But you take a pair of pliers and you grip them and squeeze it just slightly where there's two tabs, and then you rotate your pliers and grip it the other way just slightly, and that will come off. Be careful, because the spring will push it off and you'll drop it. So do it over a towel or do it over a surface where when they fall they'll be captured and you won't lose them. But so that part, as soon as I put that retainer back on there, is refreshed, repaired, whatever you want to say. So that leaves the two contacts in here. Normally they're held in by a nut on each side, which I've already taken off. Then you just bop them with a hammer, and as you can see, that one has a little knurl on it, so does that one. Now what I'm going to do is take a file, and I'm just going to smooth these down. You could use a sander. You don't want to take a lot off of them. You just want to clean them up, because there's not much sticking up, and if you grind too much or sand too much off, they won't make contact. So I'm going to lay this down. I'll be right back. Okay, I've filed those down, and I just took the bare minimum off to clean them up. I will install them back in the housing. I'll finish putting that retainer back on there. I'll drop all the parts back in. Then I will put everything back together with these machine screws and nuts. And that should be all there needs to be to make it function properly. Focus, baby, come on. Okay, when I put this back together and I put that retainer on there, what I do is use a little socket. You take that little socket, put it over there, and then you just tap down on it just until it barely starts to grip. And I don't know if you can see, there's still a little bit of spring movement. You do not want that on there tight. You want it to be able to float just a little bit. And here it is all reassembled. Just have to put the cover on, put the 4 screws in it. Okay, so here it is, all reassembled. I just put the screws through. You have to put the nuts on right as the screws start through the body, because you can't turn them. And so I use a electric screwdriver. But anyway, you just screw them through there, and then I just snipped it off with the wire cutters. So this one is ready to be reinstalled, and then I can test it. Okay, everything is reinstalled. You can see the solenoid right there underneath the battery. So now we have the moment of truth. And what did I forget to hook up? You got to remember to push the brake on. These mowers are too smart for me anymore. Well, guys, I say that'll work. Thanks for watching.